Hi, this is Greg Kilstrom. Welcome to Season 3 of The Agile World, where we discuss customer and employee experience, organizational and workforce transformation, and how business can adapt and continually improve in an agile age. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed in this show, you can go to my website at theagile.world and read my latest articles, or get a copy of my latest book, The Agile Workforce, now available on Amazon and other retailers. Hi, my name is Greg Kilstrom, and I'm the host of the Agile World podcast. Today we're going to talk about how organizations can protect themselves against the Great Resignation through a smarter recruitment marketing strategy. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Jared Hummel, president at Parqa Digital Marketing Agency. Jared, welcome to the show.
Hey, Greg, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, looking forward to talking with you. So why don't we start by why don't you give a little background on yourself and on Parqa?
Yeah, so starting with myself, I'm a little bit of a wanderer, I guess. I started my career in manufacturing and then got into real estate, property management, and then plumbing and heating, and then eventually staffing, and then digital marketing for staffing. So a little bit of a journeyman, but I think, what I've learned through that process is, most business has the same common issues, and it's a lot of times around what we're talking about today of creating a great culture, hiring great people, following the process, and scaling and growing. And so on the Parqa side, we actually have a sister company, Seek Search and Consulting, which is a recruiting and staffing agency in the Minneapolis Twin Cities market. And I actually started as the CFO for that company. And then we had a small digital agency that was flailing a little bit when I started. And so I sat down with the owner and CEO, who's a big marketing guy, and he explained his vision was to train, teach, and educate the staffing and recruiting market on the power of digital marketing. And so I said, well, that's a good true north, but we don't have any staffing clients, and we're not built to be an outsourced marketing agency. And so really, I've just kind of been on a 3.5 year journey where the first year I ran both, or stayed in my CFO role and ran Parqa to a point where it was I was able to run Parqa full time. And when Tony asked me if I wanted to do that, I said, well, yeah, why not? The only two things I haven't done in my career are marketing and sales, so it seems a logical.
Why not? Right?
Step. Yeah. So I've learned a lot, and obviously, for those of you that know digital marketing, I mean, it's very analytical, numbers based, and so I've found a lot of passion and really growing kind of the. We're less of a branding agency and more of a performance marketing agency. So really driving business results for our clients. And then with a strong focus on technology integrations, automation, and client and candidate experience. So it's been a wild ride. Like, we started with a lot of mom and pop shops, a lot of lifestyle businesses with really small retainers and really short contracts, to the point now where we're working with some of the largest staffing and recruiting firms in North America. So it's been a fun short ride, and looking forward to the future.
Nice. Well, yeah, and I think that's really interesting that you've got a number of different perspectives. I mean, not only you've worked on the, let's call it, client side, you've worked at the staffing company level, and now you're working on behalf of staffing companies. So I think that it kind of gives a well-rounded perspective to some of the things that we're going to talk about. And I want to kind of launch into our discussion here by talking about what's referred to as the Great Resignation. And so for those listening, if you're not familiar, it's this idea that a large percentage, the percentages vary by the news source that you might check, but a large percentage of employees are either considering a move, have already moved, or are thinking of making some kind of change to their current role, whether that's, again, staying but changing their role, leaving altogether. perhaps even becoming an entrepreneur, which a lot of people are considering those kinds of moves, or becoming independent, like a contractor. So, what is your definition of the Great Resignation, and a follow on to that is, how is it affecting your clients in the staffing world?
Yeah, so I guess I would just define the Great Resignation as, obviously we went through an insane 2020 that no one could have ever predicted in their lifetime, and I think when events like that happen, it really gives people time to reflect on what they're passionate about in life, like what they're doing. A lot of people having, uh, gotten. Let go are kind of retooling or had time to think, and so uh, yeah, I think that's really obviously what drived it, or was driving it, or is driving it. It's just that philosophical change in people's lives where they're like, holy crap, I've been doing this for 5, 10, 15 years, and it was just my routine, and now that routine's broken, there's this whole other world out there that that I can explore, and people are exploring it and moving. And so, yeah, from the staffing side, um, I mean, it's affected us in a lot of ways. Obviously, we staff people for other companies, but I forget. LinkedIn did a poll, and like the job postings for like staffing agency recruiters was like higher than like hospitality workers or something. It was
Oh
like
wow.
insane how many. And like we have an HR consulting division within our sister company, and they have so many job orders for contract talent acquisition people to place at our clients, that are corporate entities, that like we basically just like stop filling them because like we can't.
Yeah,
Like there's just, everyone is looking to hire, retain, and all of that. And so from our side, uh, as a staffing agency, most of our clients in our sister company are having, 100% growth, record years, can't hire their own recruiters fast enough. And
yeah.
there's actually one of our clients who's not a super large company, had a call for 17 paid search manager roles for one company, and they literally were like, nope, like there's no way we can fill those roles, like you're gonna have to go somewhere else. And if you
Wow.
take a 25,000 fee times 17, they were walking away from more than
Yeah.
$500,000, like without even blinking an eye. So yeah, it's causing disruption, for our clients, and the industry as a whole.
Yeah. So how does Parco work to, maybe not solve that exact issue, but how does
Yeah.
Parco work to help solve some of these challenges that staffing companies are running into?
Park as a whole, I think we try to talk about it as solving business problems, not
Yeah.
as just doing digital marketing, quote unquote. And obviously, part of our service is just helping companies build their brand and post on organic social and write blogs and whatnot. But you know, we I call it like the put the quarter in model. Like we're not the put the quarter in model agency. Like we're an agency partner. And so, there was a time, 3 4 months ago, that probably half of our clients were like, shut off all client lead initiatives, transition all of our budget to candidate attraction. And so that's really, the business problem we're helping them solve is using technology, social media, job board advertising, programmatic, display ads, like anything we can do to attract candidates to fill their open positions is really the critical mission we're on right now. And I think staffing firms in general, I think it's changing a little bit, but there's sometimes a negative connotation with candidates that if they can place me, great. If not, they won't give me the time of day. And so what we've done in the last year really is built out our technology and automation division within Parqa with the focus on creating awesome candidate experiences. And so, with the volume that happens in staffing companies, it's virtually impossible for a human being to nurture candidates throughout the life cycle. And so, the more we can automate that with touch points, whether that's email, text message, personal contacts, um, I think that's what's probably going to be the biggest differentiator in staffing firms in the next 5 years, because people, they don't have to work with the staffing firm a block from their house. Like, it's obviously a
Right.
national and global world now, and people are going to go where they can get placed, where they feel wanted, and where they have a great experience.
Are you seeing, just as a follow up to that, the global comment? Are you seeing a lot more organizations are more willing to hire outside of their local area?
Yeah, I think that's if you want to win, you got to meet your clients and candidates where they are, right? And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that, not coming from staffing and recruiting, my tagline is kind of, the industry as a whole is probably 5 to 7 years behind from a sophistication standpoint to a lot of other industries. And so there is a lot of hesitancy to change. And you and I were talking before this, but Bullhorn, who is the largest uh, CRM ATS, had their annual conference yesterday that I was a part of, and they were talking about like the state of disruption in staffing right now is incredible. Like, it sounds horrible, and it's not to be the like grim reaper, but there's a good chunk of small to mid-sized staffing firms that won't exist in a couple years
yeah,
because of the changes that are happening. And that's coming from a group that basically is a top three leader in this industry. So yeah, that's, I think, this whole generation, even before COVID and whatnot, like there was a reality. Like, when I worked in plastic manufacturing, we worked with LyondellBasell and Dow Chemical, were two of our suppliers, and in their sales teams, like they multiple or in their sales teams, they didn't have one salesperson under the age of 55. Like, they had like 27 global sales managers that were all retiring in a 5 year
oh wow,
window. And Dow actually had a very good uh, leadership development program that they put in place to start to raise up some of those young leaders. But at the time, anyways, a few years ago, like LyondellBasell really didn't have a plan. Like, these people that were handling billions of dollars in raw material sales were just retiring one by one, and there was no way around it. And so I think that's what we're seeing, and it's been only expedited through the coronavirus and digital
yeah,
transformation. Is millennials, Gen Xers, like they're all coming into management positions, they're coming into the workforce, and like they're what they're looking for is so much different than kind of our our mom and dad's generation of staying at a company, getting a pension, joining a union. Like,
yeah.
now it's contract, freelance. I want to live in Fiji while I write content for staffing firms. Like, I mean,
Right, right.
it's kind of cool, like I personally like coming to the office and like culture. That's an important thing to me. But as a millennial myself, like it's kind of cool to watch it change, and I have a certain level of appreciation for the future of work and work life balance.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Let's dive a little more into some of that as well as we talk more about the Great Resignation. So the most cost effective way to protect against having to hire is to have greater retention in the first place, right? So it's sort of, let's call it preventative measures. So what's preventing, from what you're saying, what's preventing companies from having better retention in the first place?
Yeah. I mean, I fortunately or unfortunately, I feel like a little bit is already predetermined. I think
Yeah.
watching the business owners that I know in the Twin Cities, and crazy wide variety of how they handled their employees and their culture through the pandemic. I think honestly is one of the driving causes of of retention. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I love our owners, and I loved them before the pandemic hit. But watching how they went through it gave me a whole nother level of appreciation for being part of the team and the business that I run. And with that, like our Parqa as a whole has not lost one employee this year, and we've actually grown by 10. Uh,
Wow.
and then our parent or our sister company, Versique, I think has lost two out of 50. And I truly believe that it was how we handled how we handled the pandemic. On
Yeah.
the other side, my wife uh, was working for a company, and she actually didn't get let go, but how they let go of people and how they had the decisions they made for self preservation. I think they had 26 employees, and 24 of them are gone.
Yeah.
And so, like, you just see like total across the board of how people handled the situation, and how that affected where they are today.
Well, yeah, and so I guess to move to the next steps, so the first stage is preventing turnover in the first place. The next stage would be that hiring slash onboarding process. What's your recommendation there? As organizations are hiring, and what's the best chance for success that they're not going to be turning around in 3 months and hiring again for the same positions?
Yeah, I mean, to me, like, I'm a huge culture guy. Like, the experience people have is what they remember, right? And um, so, like, when we've brought on people, it's really focused on the first couple weeks having a strong onboarding where they understand our values, our mission, our true north, like what their role is, meeting other people both in the agency and our sister company, so they feel well connected. um, and then I I think that the interview process is a huge thing for me. I don't know if I'm weird about it or not, but I always look at it as a two-way street. I think a lot of, especially bigger companies, but like you get in the kind of like check the box mentality where,
Yeah.
uh, you know, I mean, we could go a whole nother podcast on like
Right.
job descriptions and how the resume is dead and and all of
Right.
that.
Right.
But yeah, when I put out an offer to someone, like I've tried to give them every chance to step out and say, like, if this isn't for you, I'd be happy to refer you to one of the other agencies in the Twin Cities I'm connected with. Like, if this, if you're just taking this for a small pay bump, please self-select out. Like, that's not what we want here. Um, and then where you get your people too, right? Like, a lot of our growth has been through referrals, and so when you have a great referral network and people coming to work with other people they trust, um, you know, in regards to the onboarding, like they feel like they're essentially family the day they walk in the door, right? And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I might be a little all over the place, but I think it ultimately comes back to the culture that you create, and kind of the vetting process. Not to go on another tangent, but one of the things that freaks me out a little bit is, uh, some of these people that we're looking at hiring, they have 1-2 years experience, and they want to go from making 45,000 to 90,000 with a year of experience.
Yeah.
But the market warrants it today, but like it's not sustainable. So like, what happens a year from now when things slow down? Like, the first people to get cut are the people that are vastly
Overpaid. Yeah.
overcompensated. And so that'll be an interesting conundrum as we
Yeah.
move forward in this, because it's not I mean, to a certain extent we can raise our prices, right, as an agency, but that also requires a different level of quality of work. And when you're hiring inexperienced people at a crazy rate, um, then you risk client retention. And so that's something we've tried to balance. And I don't know if we're doing great or not, but we've slowed down the sales pipeline a little bit, even though we've grown 150% this year, just because we're not willing to pay a 2-year person more money than our 10-year director that is running the division, right? I think that's another part of the retention process is if you start hiring people at crazy rates and your employees find out about it, the first thing they do is go to LinkedIn and open up their messages and see the 15 recruiters that reached out to them in the last week.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, one last question before we wrap up here. Do you think that what we're calling the Great Resignation, do you think this is temporary? Do you think this is kind of way overused phrase, but the new normal, or is this just the way it's going to be, or are we going to go back to something that's a little less chaotic?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, obviously, I don't know if anyone knows for sure, but I, from what I'm reading about the immediate 3 to 12 month time period, is that nothing is really going to change, and in some regards, it might even continue to pick up a little bit. When you talk about long term, there's two. I'm a part of Vistage, which you may be familiar with,
Yeah.
but it's like a CEO best practice group. And I remember there was a leader from the Department of Labor that was one of our speakers. Man, it was probably 4 or 5 years ago now. But he was just talking about the economics of the workforce, and how much potential the USA has to grow, but labor was going to be the number one drawback of being able to attain that. And so, with that presentation, I would say that it's probably going to be ongoing. And then I also follow ITR economics, which is a very analytical based approach to assessing the overall economy. And they've been saying even through the pandemic, that the next 10 years is kind of going to be the roaring 20s of our generation. And so if that is truly the case based on their numerical analysis, then I would say, it's probably going to stay this way, at least for the next few years in some way, shape, or form. And it might not be solely the Great Resignation, but I think candidates and employees having the upper hand is probably something that's going to be pretty consistent for the foreseeable future.
Well, Jared, thanks so much for joining the show. For those listening, what's the best way for them to keep up with what you're doing?
Yeah. Obviously, I do some podcast work. Parqamarketing.com is where you'll see some of my blogs and videos that I do. Being that we're in the staffing and recruiting agency, unless you're in that, you probably won't see me speaking. But American Staffing Association, Staffing Industry Analysts, TechServe Alliance are some of the big best practice conference groups in our industry. So that's kind of the world I live in. So feel free to check it out if you wish.
Sounds good. Well, again, I'd like to thank Jared Hummel, president at Parqa Digital Marketing Agency, for joining the show. Thanks for listening to The Agile World with Greg Kihlstrom. See you next week. Thanks again for listening to the Agile World podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe on your podcast channel of choice and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can learn more and get a copy of my latest book, The Agile Workforce, from my website at theagile.world.